you're anything like me, you probably garden, and you garden, you're here, but you've tried multiple methods, and some stuff works, some stuff doesn't. You want to know, like, what is the absolute best method for gardening? And it's kind of a mixed bag. There's so many methods out there, but there is truly one method that is the best for you and your garden. Over the years, I've tried many different methods in my garden. I've done a lot of things. I've done square foot gardening. I've done vertical gardening. I've done hugelkultur. I mean, I've done lasagna gardening, no-till, till, organic, non-organic, all that stuff. And you know, it's such a mixed bag about what is the absolute best method. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Sandy Bottom Homestead. I hope you're having an absolutely fantastic day. I'm out here in the afternoon today because I've been working in the bees. It's my sweat rag for the bees so I don't get sweat in my eyes. Bald head, sweat drips down, it's an issue. But I stirred the bees up really bad, so I've had to wait for them to go back in, and now that they're in, we can come out here and talk about this. So the best method is really a number of different things. First of all, it's what works best for you in your garden. So it could be a number of things, and I've had a lot of success with some of these methods, and I've seen a lot of people have success with some of them, and then some of them I've seen people have success with that I absolutely suck at, and I don't know why. Maybe it's me, maybe it's, I don't know, who knows. But you know, the best method for all of those who just want to know the best method and get out, it's your own method. It's your own methods. And what I like to do is I like to combine all of the methods together. And that's really the important part here. So I want to just discuss a little bit what I do in my garden as far as combining methods, because I don't use any one singular method. I don't use square foot gardening alone. I damn sure enough don't do hugelkultur. To a bare minimum, hugelkultur is what I do. You know, any of this stuff, I don't subscribe to a certain method, and especially if it has a certain person's name in front of it, I generally don't subscribe to it because it just doesn't work for me. I want to start with the bare minimum method, and you know, honestly, that's the organic or synthetic. You know, where do we fall within that range? I mean, this is I would say 98% organic garden, if not 99%. But I always leave an option out there because, you know, everything's doing good. Everything's doing very well right now. I don't have any major issues. I see a little bit of pest damage I need to get on top of this evening. Overall, I don't have any issues, but let me tell you, if I had an issue and I just had to absolutely treat it, I would put whatever it took on there. You know, just to kind of get it up, get it going. Recently, and I should have pulled the name, and I'm sorry. If you made this comment, please comment down below because it was a fantastic comment. And what they said is, I start with organic, and I'm summarizing here. I start with organic fertilizers, but then I will push synthetic to kind of give it that perk. And I think that's so great because this person has really figured out like how they like to use all of this together. And that's really, I think, a beautiful way, because you put the organic fertilizer down for the soil, and then every once in a while you just give it a little shot of like some juice, liquid, synthetic, and then that would kind of perk the plant up. But you keep that organic going and it will feed the soil. So you're kind of getting the best of both worlds there. Like I said, I don't use synthetic fertilizers, typically speaking, but I'm absolutely not above it. If I had a whole bed that was really hurting and I needed to give it something to perk it up right away, absolutely I would do it. You know, it's not a big deal. You know, it's not the end of the world. I mean, if I use a synthetic fertilizer once or twice in my garden, it doesn't ruin it, trust me. I do pieces and parts of square foot gardening. So you can go around the garden, you can see like right here. So right here in this turnips, we've actually been coming out, and as they grow, I've been thinning them out. So this is my thin pile, and you know, I just every once in a while I'll come in and I'll just pull one out. If there's getting all tangled up, I'll pull it out and thin it. So I'm not really completely subscribed to it, but square foot gardening is a very good guide. You know, it's good because this is a square foot, this is 32 square feet. So it does make some sense, but I don't like for the maintenance aspect of it, you know. So what I find is, for instance, like these kales here, I could put more kales in this row right here, but it just seems to work better to have a little bit more room in there to give them some room to breathe and then grow, and it doesn't really hurt my feelings too bad. Did that video a couple days ago, well, maybe it was the last video, I don't remember now, about the corn bed and how I'm managing the spacing in my corn bed. So I'm planning on tweaking my spacing a bit and playing around with that next year and seeing if that improves it. And what I can tell you is the square foot gardening is very good as a guide, but it's also flawed in my opinion in certain ways. And I think we sacrifice growth to some extent. We just did a whole podcast. I don't know if it's out yet. It's on the Backyard Gardens podcast about square foot gardening. And we're actually going to be going through all the methods and just discussing them, not saying really the good and bad sides of both of them. So we will do that too. But, you know, for the square foot gardening, I'm not 100% sold on it. But like I said, I use aspects of it. I think about my whole garden a square foot interface, and then, you know, there are things that I put in a square foot, but then there's also things that I'll put more in, and usually what it is I'll put less in than is recommended by that guide. Now, I've done lasagna gardening before, and the way that worked for me is I did it for I think 2 or 3 years, and what it was is, you know, started off with a bed, and then I put mulch down. The mulch broke down, I put more mulch down, and then I came back and put compost down, then I put more mulch down, and then I put topsoil down, and then what we did is we put more mulch down. And I was really concerned about how it would turn up, because when we went down and we dug in the soil to go plant, you could see the layers within, and that kind of worried me. So what I did is I kind of anticipated this fear to come up. So what I did is I left a pile of topsoil out back, and every time I dug a hole, I dropped a handful of topsoil in. Now, when I came back later on in the spring, I had no issues growing. Everything grew just fine. No better or no worse than they did the year before. But as I went through, I could see that it was breaking everything down because you had those layers, and I put those layers of soil in to kind of help feed it and to help speed up the process a little bit. So it seemed to work and really do its thing, but I'm not like, I'm only going to do lasagna gardening. You know, it's like, I'll do parts of it. You know, I have no problem coming in here, especially this time of year. Like, this is the time of year when I like to utilize a piece of this method. So would it be true lasagna gardening? Probably not. But you know, once our broccoli is done, then we'll come back and you can see we've got a nice layer of mulch here. Let me get you down so you can see it. So we've got a good layer of mulch. Once that's done, what we'll do is we'll put chicken manure down from our chickens, and then we will put the topsoil on top of that, and then, you know, just kind of sandwich that in, and it helps speed up that process. You know, that moisture will help break it down and really speed up the decomposition process, and also giving that manure time to age a little bit more. So we will typically spend time doing that, and that is an aspect of that I like. But in the summertime, not so much. You know, I'll come back and I'll put some more on, some mulch or something, but I don't usually just keep layering and layering and layering and layering. I do it typically in the winter times when it's got time to break down, and I'm not really, like, my garden's still got stuff planted in it, as you can see, and it'll continue to have stuff planted in it, but as it comes out, it's not getting replanted. It's kind of, those spots are resting, and so we'll use this time to build our garden a little bit more. On the soil building process, and let's go into the no-till aspect of it. So well, first of all, I'd never ever deep till all the way to the bottom my beds. I don't do that. But I do now. I do come in and I cultivate it every time, and it looks different for everybody. So every time I plant, when this bed's empty, I'll come in, and along each of these rows is where I plant. So I've got 4 rows. You can see the hoses, and so I dig the hoses out rebury them, and then get plants put on top of them. So we are digging that, you know, and we don't just spot anymore. We go down the entire row and we dig that out. You've seen me do it on here a number of times. We've got a little Ryobi tiller, hand tiller things, very shallow, probably goes 3 inches deep. I think what I'm going to start doing too is I'm going to come in, because I'm not having any compaction issues or anything like that. I think I'm going to come in and till all of my beds that are empty, just lightly till, not deep till, but lightly till them, just to kind of stir it up a little bit, get a lot of this mulch that's at the surface and get it down below. I could turn it by hand, but at the same time, like, it's just a lot of work, you know what I mean? And I don't mind it. I don't think that, you know, when I did no-till, I actually ended up having issues because I took it to the extreme and I did not till at all. And what I did is I would come out and I would just dig a hole, plop a plant in, dig a hole, plop a plant in. So I was never really turning the soil around very much. And what happened is I wasn't getting enough air into the soil, you know. So if you think about this garden, you know, 3 to 4 times a year, this soil is getting turned over to some extent. You know, now that we run all the way down the rows, we're getting that turn and we're getting the oxygen pushed back into it. And I know that water helps deliver oxygen and all that stuff, but it's a little bit extra of a push. So we do it that way. Now when we do our sweet potatoes and our white potatoes and kind of our garlics and onions, the whole bed basically gets tilled by our hands. So, you know, it's not really that big a deal. I mean, we're not throwing razor blades in and chopping stuff up, but we definitely want to get in there and we work it and we get it turning, because what that's going to help us with as well, this extra stuff right here that's just stubborn being broken down, this will all, as it tills in, we'll chop it up. And then once you get it chopped up, like, this won't break down as fast as these. So if we can get it down smaller, then that's just going to break it down even faster. So that's what we're trying to do when we do this. So it's just a light tilling. You know, usually I think my tiller probably goes about that deep. So we're just able to turn it a little bit, get it in. But what that helps us with too is it helps loosen up the soil so we can get all of our lines reburied and get them going in the right direction. If I had compaction issues, I would probably do like a really deep tilling and then I would just leave it. I wouldn't even do anything else. And that typically, you know, if you till too much when you already have compaction issues, believe it or not, it can make it worse. So I would stay away from that. But I do use a little bit of that, but not a lot. We put our next beds in, we're going to put them 2 here and then 2 up there. And a lot of people use a hugelkultur method, which is basically just piling a lot of stuff in the ground and getting it going so that you can, you know, you don't have to use as much soil. So the idea is you put a lot of sticks and tree limbs and leaves and stuff like that, and you put the soil on top and then it'll help break it down. Well, we did that in a bed back there I'll take you to in a second, and it didn't really work out great, and I'll show you what happened. But what we do when we put our beds down, we don't really do anything. I mean, we've got grass here, so we don't have anything major, and really we used to put cardboard down, but now I don't even know if we need to do that, because I believe it was the bed behind me with no cardboard and nothing grew up. I mean, you know, you've got 8 inches of soil to grow up. No sunlight can get down. It basically smothers it out. We didn't put any tree limbs in. We haven't put any tree limbs in since the last one we did way in the back. And for the other ones, we've just put leaves. We'll put old potted plant soil in. We'll put, you know, just basically stuff like that, nothing crazy. And then we'll put our soil in, and it seems to work pretty well. I mean, I just, you know, I did it one time and it didn't work. Let me show you, because this is the bed we did it with. And what we did is we put some probably 2-inch diameter limbs in here, you know, probably about that big around. See that? Haha, gotcha. And then what we do is we just went in and then we covered it with soil. But what happened was all the soil was draining, but the wood wasn't breaking down. So we had to keep adding soil, and we kept getting divots within it. And I could feel it down there. It wasn't real bad, but I could feel the issue kind of arising. So I actually stuck my hand down there last year, and that limb 4 years later was still there. You can see 4 years later, if that limb's still there, you're looking at, you know, if you put big trunks in there, it could be years before it goes away. And so what are you really growing in at that point? Exactly. So we put the leaves in, we put the old soil in. If we have some cardboard, we'll mix it in, but we don't really line the bottom. We may mix it in. We'll put compost in, we'll put unfinished compost in, we'll put chicken manure in and stuff like that. And all of that stuff is the same idea. Is it's setting up that process for things to break down and really start to feed your soil sooner. So we're actually composting within the garden, but we're not really doing it on a massive scale. You know what I mean? Like if I put unfinished compost in, so what we'll do is we'll build these beds, or we won't build them, we're gonna move them, and we'll set them in place. And when I set them in place, I'm not really overly prepared to go out and get my soil right away. I'm not really itching to do that job. That's a crappy job. But I will get my soil. But what we'll do is we'll start saving our food scraps that we usually put out in our compost, but we'll start another maybe 5-gallon bucket or so. And then what we'll do, we'll come out and we'll dump it in there, and then we'll come back and then we'll put a layer of soil down, and then we may dump another one in. So we'll have a couple small light layers of it in, and then as we put compost and stuff like that around it, then it can just kind of charge that soil a little bit sooner. And that's why we do this stuff in the wintertime, because even though we're doing it then, it still has time to continue to break down a little bit. All the critters can get in and eat it and enjoy it, and then we get to enjoy afterwards, because what's happening is the worms are coming in and they're eating it, and they're leaving earthworm castings and stuff like that, and we're not having to add any of that. Nature is doing it for us. There's a lot of different methods you can do in your garden, and I just, you know, one thing that I'm really proud of in my garden is that I don't subscribe to one method. I don't do one certain thing. As you know now, I take pieces and parts and add it together and do every single bed with a little bit of a concept of each one. And it's given me what I like to produce and what I like to get out of my garden. And it's freeing. It's freeing to say, hey, I don't like this, so let me back off from it, instead of looking at it and saying like, hey, I don't like the square foot garden method, so I'm not gonna use any aspect of it. But I think that you can develop your own ways you do it, in your own certain methods that you employ in your garden, and really get the results that you're looking for. So let us know what you're using for your garden. Like, and if you're thinking about like there's a certain piece of something you want to keep, put that in the comments if you don't mind, because it'll help somebody out, because there's so many methods, right? So like vertical gardening, for instance, I do the trellises, but I'm not really big in like pots and hanging upside downs and, you know, all that stuff. It's just too much for me. But I mean, obviously trellises is an age-old technique that's been around forever and ever. So it's a proven and tried method that's just, you know, lasted. But there's all these different ways you can do it. And there's stuff that we like to do that's maybe not really in any certain method, but we can create our own method. So I have Ben's method. Do you have a method?